And now, it is my honor to introduce this year's baccalaureate speaker, Professor Kristi Erdal. Kristi has had a significant positive impact on the lives of many students, including myself. She has an amazing talent to make anything she says interesting and entertaining. She managed to make a class on statistics and computers tolerable and even exciting for 2 blocks. She is an incredible speaker and such a joy to listen to. She also has this fantastic talent of being blunt and brutally honest without being offensive. Kristi gave a speech during our NSO week about alcohol use, so I think this is a great way to bring our CC experience full circle. Please join me in welcoming Professor Kristi Erdal.
Good afternoon, everyone. That's a good crowd right there. All right. It is an enormous honor for me to have been nominated by members of the class of 2014 to give this address. I remember my own baccalaureate 26 years ago. Stop doing the math. Stop. My friends sitting next to me at that time are still my friends. My parents were as proud as I'd ever seen them, and they're still proud. And the opening hymn was "O Beautiful for Spacious Skies," written by a professor at Colorado College, a place I'd never heard of. As I understand it, the baccalaureate address is supposed to provide you with some spiritual guidance. So, class of 2014, what were you thinking? Spiritual is not quite the first adjective that comes to mind for me. When I teach research methodology and inferential statistics, spiritual transformation only happens occasionally. Sometimes, never. It really never happens, does it? No. I could try to summon some credibility by reporting that my extended family has a very eclectic religious background, including Lutheran, Episcopalian, Nazarene, Unitarian Universalist, agnostic, atheist, Mormon, and Native American spirituality. And my extended family is only 10 people, okay? I think, however, that I can provide the most spiritual guidance by talking about how losing my religion, ironically, provided me with a form of discovery I never anticipated, sparked by working in a discipline that, in college, I'd also never even heard of. I think my parents want you to know that they did introduce me to religion, a very middle-of-the-road brand of Lutheranism, service to others, and a practical approach to Scripture, no fire, no brimstone. It was my infrastructure as a child and young person. I went to Sunday school and Luther League and received communion and got confirmed. It was my scaffolding, and there was a comfort in it and a purpose in it all my early life. And there are no regrets, by the way. But the confirmation part was a little premature as a teenager, as that faith had never really been tested until I was about your age. That is, after college and a first job of working in a cognitive development lab, I went to graduate school in clinical psychology. Parenthetically, this first job you get out of college can be so helpful in planning your future. When I worked with 3-year-olds on novel word acquisition studies, I realized that I never, ever, ever wanted to work with 3-year-olds again. Okay? So that's good to know. Anyway, in graduate school, I started working with people with traumatic brain injuries and spinal cord injuries as I chanced upon the discipline of neurorehabilitation. And my lifelong faith, whose scaffolding had admittedly become weaker each year, now was about to collapse. I worked with a brother and a sister, both in their 20s and both in comas after their car was hit by a truck. Their head injuries ultimately erased years of their lives and their educations. I worked with a young girl hit by a car while she was in the heart of puberty, her frontal lobes unleashing exponential disinhibition, not even seen in the most explosive teenagers. I worked with a young man who fell off a roof working for a roofing company, his spinal cord injury complete. And I worked with a young man just diagnosed with spinal cord cancer and paralyzed, just months after his wedding to his college sweetheart. All of these people had had their lives ripped out from under them, typically through no fault of their own, had those lives put into a blender and returned to them. Patient numbers were staggering, and every demographic was represented. Brain injury does not discriminate, indeed. But while working with brain and cord-injured patients was rewarding for me, with an enormously important purpose, unlike my faith, it was not comforting at all. In fact, it is the definition of discomforting. For me, being confronted daily with the fact that at any moment, your thoughts, your personality, your life could be scrambled and given back to you and your family to cope with no preparation, was, well, discomforting. Watching people struggle with daily pain and relearning to sit up and relearning to use a spoon and relearning to speak. So, faith, belief in a benevolent higher power, acceptance of the universe, when patient by patient, neuron by neuron, lives by lives were being dismantled in front of me, I couldn't reconcile it. I was rapidly losing my religion, my faith, and that was hard. I was slowly but very surely dropping part of the infrastructure I had grown up with that had provided purpose and comfort. Concerned about disappointing my parents, but knowing that I couldn't say I believe anymore because I didn't. By the way, this is not a story of me finding my religion again after a miraculous recovery of one of my patients or after looking into my newborn's eyes or anything like that. I looked into my newborn's eyes after childbirth and thought, wow, that really hurt. So this is not that. But you might have heard the saying that when a door closes, a window opens. That saying means, of course, that as we have one loss, something comes in to fill that void. You know, I actually don't believe that saying, but what I do believe, like the humanist psychologists, is that when you have that void, you have a need to fill it yourself, to seek out something substantive, to fill in your own gaps. When we lose our religion or our faith or our spirit, there's an opportunity to reevaluate our worldview and decide with what we would like to fill it. So now, if I've removed divine intervention from my vernacular, even in the broadest Jamesian sense, and I've removed just world for sure, how do I think about humanity and its context? How do I understand selfhood and identity in individuals? That is, who are we as humans after our brains have been meddled with? Are we the persons we were before, now damaged? Or are we a new person, a new soul, different in motor abilities and speech and personality and sense of humor? Are we still in there under the injury? Or are we now gone? These are not small questions for a clinical neuropsychologist in training. I slowly began to figure that who are we but the sum total of our currently functioning neurons? Now, I don't have to look behind me to know that some of my dear colleagues in philosophy have just fainted from me saying that, okay? But I can soften the sentiment with a tapestry metaphor, and now my dear friends in English are saying, oh, good Lord, Kristi's using a metaphor. But if you imagine that the billion neurons or threads of your brain create a unique tapestry, that every thought, emotion, and movement illuminates different patterns of that tapestry, and that tapestry is splashed with the colors of your personal neurochemistry, well, that is you. That is the unique beauty of the sum total of your currently functioning neurons. Your personality, your ability to dance or not, your knowledge of calculus or not, your memory of your hometown, it is you. But if a thread is removed, is it a different tapestry? If millions of threads are removed at one time, it is a different tapestry. If you rearrange the colors, it is different still. How different does it have to be before we say that we are no longer dealing with the original tapestry, but that we are dealing with a new one? René Descartes utilized a needle through a cloth metaphor for memory, suggesting that with each memory you make, the cloth is disturbed just a bit, imperceptibly, as each needle passes through, but that the needle hole remains and remains, no matter how much you stretch the cloth to get rid of it. From a modern neurophysiological perspective of retrograde messengers and long-term potentiation, he was essentially right. About that, anyway. We might have butted heads about the whole ghost in the machine thing. But so in these brain and spinal cord injured people, handed back to them their sometimes torn and bleached tapestries, the sum total of their currently functioning neurons diminished in number and function, I found the most resilience, the most drive I had ever seen with patients or students. That perhaps explains why I lost my patience with some of you over the years with your billion fully functioning neurons. These folks were embarking on a neuron by neuron, thread by thread, painstaking rebuilding of themselves and their tapestries, becoming whoever they were going to become in the end. Was it who they were in the beginning? Surely not. And yet that did not seem to deter them. As they put it best, I'm not me anymore, but I'm still me. And then I got to thinking, isn't that how we all do it? How we all move forward, neuron by neuron, thread by thread, weaving our tapestry, becoming whoever we are going to become in the end. Will it be who we were in the beginning? Surely not. And yet that does not seem to deter us. You and I have had more choice about the concepts we tackle, but the process is much the same. In fact, one could argue that that is exactly what we have all been doing for the past 4 years, helping you to unravel your tapestry, encouraging you to unravel your tapestry, in some instances forcing you to unravel your tapestry, and then providing you the tools to reconstruct it, giving you the proverbial needles to tack yourself back together. Literature, proofs, experiments, composing, sculpting, writing, they all involved breaking down and building up, reimagining and reinventing a concept, interlacing your new thoughts and ideas. Descartes' needles have woven their way through your newer and newer cloth, leaving their marks these last 4 years. You're still you, but you're not you anymore. What I found in the vacuum vacated by religion was an awe and a passion and a purpose to serve those patients and to teach about those patients that I hadn't ever experienced before. My sanctity, my calling, perhaps. I felt like I found in them the essence of humanity, the drive, the tenacity, the forgiveness of unimaginable sins, the perseverance through failures, the dignity of acceptance of what would not change, the parts of the tapestry that could not be resewn. And at the same time, I felt like I found the way that it worked for all of us. Losing my religion made me search for other ways to understand the world and to figure out my role, my purpose. Brain-injured folks had facilitated that loss for me, and it also shown me how to refill the void that it left, very similarly to how I was attempting to help them refill and rebuild and reweave the voids they'd been handed. There are no miraculous recoveries in neurorehabilitation, but there are slow and steady ones. My frontal lobe patient recovered fully when her edema went down, and we entertained her tirelessly with stories of what she had said and done post-coma. As a teenage girl, she was mortified, and that was a good sign of frontal lobe functioning. The patient with a complete spinal cord injury went from roofing to managing a home building company that built for the disabled. After many years, the sister of the brother-sister pair went on to get a master's degree, and the brother went on to manage the family business, a job he did not have to learn afresh as he had worked there all his life, good because his capacity for making new memories was diminished. After learning about how to do bowel programs with her husband with spinal cord cancer, and yes, a bowel program is exactly what you think it is, I took the young wife aside and I said to her, I understand that this wasn't what you signed up for. And she looked me straight in the eye and she said, this is exactly what I signed up for. I still had a lot to learn about loss and adaptation. As a clinical psychologist, I don't believe you overcome losses. Your losses become you, become part of you, and not the gum on your shoe, albatross on your back sort of way, but in a part of the tapestry sort of way. Perhaps the metaphorically darker, heavier threads that we carry with us that remind us of what we know, what we never wanted to know, but what we do know, ideally without those threads tying us down and binding us. So in 4 years, what have you lost? What left a void? Some of you have had enormous personal losses, as Kate said. Your classmate Reuben, your friend Emily, your teammate Scott, your professor Laura, your grandfather, your aunt, your friend from back home. These aren't voids that just fill up again. These are moments, long moments of contemplation, where we realize personal loss is so hard, precisely because of how much of our tapestries these folks helped us to create in the first place. These losses seem to undo us, and yet their threads, interlaced with ours, enable us in many ways to carry forward, to pull and tug us forward. It is with personal loss that we recognize the permanence of the needles through the cloth. Other losses are less painful, but sometimes no less changing. In the past 4 years, have you lost your blissful ignorance about the world and its politics? Have you lost a lack of awareness of poverty after working the soup kitchen? Have you lost your interest in medicine, perhaps coinciding with getting queasy on your first EMT ride? Have you lost that perfect relationship, which really wasn't that perfect, but you'll figure out that later? You have lost elections and that internship you wanted. You have lost jobs already. You've lost games and meets and matches and an NCAA berth due to penalty kicks. Damn. And you've woven in all of those threads, all of those challenging, beautiful, difficult threads into your tapestry to remind you, the rough filaments helping to brace and reinforce you in the future, as only those of loss can. In 4 years, what threads have you plucked out willingly? Your homophobia, subtle racism, implicit gender bias? Well, how would you know if it's implicit, right? Okay. I remember plucking out the tequila thread pretty quickly in college myself. When did you pluck out your idea that the first draft of a paper was the final draft of a paper? And how long did it take you to pluck out the procrastination thread on the block plan, right? In so many ways, you have rewoven yourself. Some ways were monumental, and some subtle but strong. Some are still in progress, for sure. And in 4 years, what have you gained to fill your voids? Wow. Friends for life. Mentors for life. A passion for film and new media, or physics, or international politics, or all of those. You've gained the understanding that collaboration is a part of all disciplines. Perhaps you've gained a mission to start a nonprofit, or a life-changing appreciation of cultural differences and similarities from your study abroad. You've gained a purposeful approach to thinking, rethinking, and thinking through again, to writing, rewriting, and writing through again. You've gained awards and jobs and graduate school acceptances, and class of 2014, you even gained back our gold pan from DU. You've gained the realization that you can learn anything in 3.5 weeks. Parents, you may think that your loss is the forfeiture of your babies at this juncture. Well, indeed it is. Those 18-year-olds you dropped off here in August of 2010 are not coming home with you. Well, unfortunately, actually, they are coming home with you, just to save money for a little while, but those people are not the same people that you left here 4 years ago. They have plans you didn't make for them. They have ideas you never would have imagined. They have losses you don't even know about. They have gained so much. You provided them the original pattern. But your children have changed the tapestries they came with, strand by strand. They've woven their losses and their gains into that pattern, making it even richer and making it their own. They're your children, but they're not your children anymore. Class of 2014, with your billions of fully functioning neurons, minus a few since last Wednesday, perhaps. In 4 years, you have lost much, and you have gained much. You have unraveled yourself, perhaps several times, but you've respun yourself and your worldview, and you will continue to do it thread by thread, neuron by neuron. So no, you're not done, but you're ready. So, exhale, grab your friend's hands forever, thank your parents every day, stay in touch with your faculty whenever you can, and on Tuesday, get down to the business of using that gorgeous tapestry you now own. As you work in places and in disciplines you've never heard of, don't be afraid of weaving in new threads, changing the colors, becoming who you are going to be and going to be and going to be. And when pursuing your purpose, know that you have the skills to handle when you need to pull out some of those threads, to close a door, when you need to work with 3-year-olds or use a metaphor, when you need to question your infrastructure or dismantle your scaffolding, or of course, when you find yourself losing your religion. Those skills were exactly what you signed up for. Thank you for listening.